RADJU HOMPESCH jippreżenta l-programm Niltaqgħu Ma', produzzjoni u preżentazzjoni ta' Marija Camilleri u Charles Mizzi.
Inselmulkom jina u siħbi Charles Mizzi u nilqawkom għal-programm ieħor Niltaqgħu Ma', programm li xanda kull nar ta' ħamis fil-11 ta' filgħodu u jkollu ripetizzjoni kull nar ta' sibt fil-11 u 5 ta' filgħodu. Illum għandna programm daqsxejn b'differenza u ħanajdilkom għala. Mela l-ewwel waħda il-mistieden li għandna magħna mhuwiex Malti imma fil-fatt huwa awtur Ingliż, is-Sur Vincent Frost. U it-tieni differenza hija għaliex l-intervista se nagħmluha maqsuma fit-tnejn. Mela l-ewwel nofsija bl-Ingliż biex nitkellmu ma' Mr. Vincent Frost mbagħad wara it-tieni nofsija ikonna iċ-ċans biex ħaniddedikawha biex infissulkom aħjar dak li jkun għalilna Vincent għal benefiċċju naturalment ta' dawk li forsi mhumiex daqshekk komdi jitkellmu jew inkella jisimgħu bl-Ingliż. Charles, fidejk.
Jena introduzzjoni qasira, jena il-ħosti onorat li l-lum fl-studio għanna l-Vincent Frost, persuna li huwa interessanti ħafna, specialment fl-esperienza li kellu meta kien tifel għaw Malta, u ħanisaw minn għandu l-esperienza li għandu, pero Vincent Frost ma għax bis fuq l-esperienza u għafetem. Il-lum għadu kif għalenna li huwa uffiċjal fil-Polizija Metropolitana ta' Londra, u koll li dan kiteb novella, u din novella għamela bay fiction, u koll ħafna mill-esperienzi li kellhom meta kien hawn Malta. Hija naħseb biċċa xogħol tajba, bil-Malti il-novella li semma hija jisimha Marbut bil-Kuxjenza, hija naħseb anke t-tajtel huwa wkoll interessanti, però issa I will switch to English. Vincent, welcome you to the studio, and I said that this is something which is very interesting, especially that we are going to have you with your experience and how you came to write that novel. I'm going to ask you the first question. You came as a little boy to Malta. They were not usual circumstances, how a little boy finds himself in Malta, and then what you went through in your experiences, but how you can tell us how you came to Malta? What were the circumstances?
Yeah, thank you. Hello. My father was a corporal in the Royal Air Force in the 60s. And he was based in Malta because Malta was a base from where operations could be undertaken in what was Aden, is now the Yemen. And there was a lot of internal problems there at the time. And so Malta was chosen as a base. So my father was posted here to Malta.
We are talking about 1964?
About 1966.
66,
67. You know, I can't remember the exact date.
But in the 60s, in the middle of the 60s.
Middle to late 60s, yeah. So he was originally posted here to RAF Lua for 3 years. And we came along with him. And you were your father, your mother, and your brothers? Yes, 2 brothers. I'm the middle brother, and my mother obviously.
So you had 3. So this is an introduction of about your family.
Yes.
So, according to newspapers, your semi-fictional novel by Conscious Bound was inspired by memories of your experience in Malta. Were there extraordinary events that stuck in your mind, which you used as a background to your novel?
There were many extraordinary events over the 8 years that I was here. It started out as a normal 3-year posting to an interesting country. During that time, my father, as I said, was backwards and forwards to Aden, or the Yemen. During that time we were left alone, and my mother met a local Maltese man during this time and fell in love with him. So when my father returned, that was kind of the end of the marriage, unfortunately. So he returned to Britain. My mother decided...
That's what I wanted to ask you, because it's not clear in this interview we're reading. When your mother met this Maltese, somehow you and your brothers were left by yourself to fend for yourself. What happened to your father? He just left, or he finished his service and was sent back?
Well, yes, he finished his service, and so yes, he was sent back. Initially, we went back with him.
Oh, you did went back to UK?
With him and my mother, just to formalise things, and then we all returned to Malta.
Except your father?
Except my father.
So you came with your mother?
Yes. Yeah. So we came back to Paula.
And you were living in Paula, because people who are hearing us would like to know where you lived, where you stayed.
Living in RADJU.
RADJU, yeah.
On Valletta Road.
Valletta Road.
With your mother?
Yes, with my mother, and with her new man, if you want to call it that.
Do you recall that this place where you were living, the house?
Oh, very well. Yes.
Is still there?
It's still there. It's just up the road from the church.
In Paula?
In Paula. Not the big church, the Talordes.
Valletta Road.
So I was an abbati there for a while.
You were an altar boy?
Yes.
Yes. In Paula?
In Paula.
Yeah. In the big church or in the parish church?
In the small one.
In the small one.
At the end of Valletta Road. Yeah. So no, maybe it is a bit confusing from the article. Left to fend for ourselves, we weren't thrown out onto the street, but money was very, very short. But
what happened? You described this man that your mother met as quite rich, with a big American car. You described.
Yes, it's true.
But then after 1 year, you start having problems about finance, how you're going to cope with life. What actually happened there?
Well, he was a bit of an entrepreneur, really. He was very clever.
He was a businessman?
Yes, he was very skilled, craftsman. And he, at one point, he ran for as a member of Parliament for the Labour Party as well. I don't think he got in there, but I know that he didn't. But so he was involved in a lot of.
He was quite well known in society, in the Maltese society. Yeah,
I guess. I mean, as a child, I don't know, but I guess so.
Was he tight-fisted? Because he put you in through all this misery.
I try and understand now a bit more now that I'm an adult, and when you're taking on someone else's children, it can be difficult.
After some time, problems start cropping up.
It's not, it isn't only money, but money is also an issue. And and it did get to the point where there was very little food, so we had no clothes.
But what happened? He discarded you, or he didn't take care of you, or
he
had other interest? You were not his children, of course.
One of the big problems, which I shouldn't really go into too much, but he already had a family of his own.
I see. That makes a difference. That's why I'm asking.
So I wouldn't really want to talk about.
But we have to understand actually what happened.
Yeah. So that obviously caused financial problems. Yeah. And he wasn't always around, so we literally were hungry, and sometimes eating.
This is what amazes me. That you had a good life in Malta because your father was an ex-RAF officer. For the first year, there seems to be no problems, but suddenly life took a down dive for you. And you finished, and I hope you can explain, begging, and you were sort of living in poverty. Actually, how did it go so wrong for you?
I'll be honest, at that point, I'm not even sure that we were officially in the country. We didn't really exist. I don't think.
You mean officially you were not registered that you are living in Malta?
I don't. I personally think that is the case. So that yes, that was a problem. But when I've talked about having no clothes to wear, wearing.
They gave you the female trousers.
I had some trousers with a zip on the side.
On the side, my God.
I was struck by that.
So I was pretty sure. But there were a lot of kind people around. Mothers of my school friends, they would look after me, give me food, cuddle me, and and there was one guy called Vladimir Pisani, and he had a shop on the corner on Valletta Road. And he used to give us food. He wanted to adopt. I don't think it was me. I think it was my younger brother. He offered to adopt one of us.
Yeah. Did he?
Very. No, he didn't. No.
No.
He was told no.
But if I ask you, the Maltese people were kind to you. They were considerate.
Very kind. Very kind.
Along with the negative experience, there's something which...
No, definitely.
Which is
But that was not the fault of the Maltese, of course. What
No.
happened is family problems.
Yeah.
But you say here that, I mean, it's terrible that you had to go and collect sort of rubbish or empty bottles to get some money to get some food.
It's true.
Wasn't that in desperation of the situation at the time?
It was, I guess, but when you're a child of that age, you're not really thinking about
But you had
the
to, no?
complexities of what's going on. You just think, I'm hungry. I'm going to try and get some money to get some food.
But it was forced on you to get some money to do that. I mean,
No, I was never sent to beg, if that's what you mean.
No.
It was just a case of, we would just be out running around on our own all day, and we would get a meal a day.
You had a meal a day.
A meal a day.
I mean, you were not hungry. No.
We were always hungry, but I guess when you're a kid, you're always hungry. But I had been at the point where I've eaten food from the street because I was so hungry.
But in the meantime, you were still living with your mother.
Yes, but my mother had a very long illness, so she had cancer. So some people have said, how could your mother let this happen to you? But she wasn't well.
At that time, she was sick.
She was. She must have been sick for years.
Because she
But by
she
the
died
time,
very young, isn't it?
by the time it was diagnosed, it was too late. And she was never allowed out of the house herself, so it was a very, very strained relationship. You know, I don't remember her ever being allowed out of the house.
No, she was sick.
No, I just wasn't allowed out.
No.
And she didn't go to hospital, was?
Eventually,
At the end.
Eventually, she had to, but it was that advanced, the cancer, that it was too late.
But at that time, you were going to school, or you were
Yes,
just?
yes.
You went to school to
Yeah,
Paula.
I went
to
to
Verdala, didn't you?
Well, Verdala was
Verdala school?
But Verdala, when his father was
when I
the-
was with
his
my father.
As a son of an airman.
Yeah. And then later on, I went to the. Is it Talgvern you call it?
Talgvern,
Talgvern,
yeah,
yeah.
a state school.
He speaks
yeah.
Maltese, huh?
Yeah.
So I went there for quite a while, and then I moved to Mount Carmel College in Santa Venera.
How were you treated by the other boys?
We were just
The Maltese boys.
yeah,
you know.
we were friends.
You were accepted.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned something in this interview we had about when your mother was on the burial, when she was at the cemetery when
Yeah.
they took her,
Yeah.
and you said something happened to you that you didn't explain it well, but then you ran out of the cemetery probably and you finished in Marsa Schlock. What was it? Was it the overreaction of losing your mother and seeing her going down the grave?
No,
was it human reaction? or-
that's a little bit condensed. I mean, the timeline was a bit longer than that. It was upsetting at the cemetery because this guy decided in his grief he would take the lid off the coffin at the cemetery.
The guy.
So that was the upsetting.
When you saw your mother
Well, I mean,
in the coffin.
but before that, I'd already been to Guardamangia, to the hospital, to see her.
St.
when-
Luke's.
To see her.
And she was already downstairs in the mortuary.
Mortuary. Yeah.
But I was on my own, you know. Just,
So that affected you
Yes,
psychologically? Or?
I think so. I mean, I think you only realise these things many years later. When you come to terms. So writing my book helped
Now
me.
we come to your book, that's why
But
we're
no,
asking these questions.
it's been very cathartic.
Because you take it out, sort of.
Yeah, it definitely was a big help. So yeah, the Marsa Schlock thing.
Yeah.
There's
Somebody picked
And
you
the
up
woman
then,
took you in, and what happened from there?
There was a school friend of mine, an English school friend, and he lived in Marsa Schlock. So I went down one day. How long after Mum died? Maybe a few weeks only. I went down to visit him, and he wasn't in. So there was a lady next door, an English lady, and she came out And I said I was looking for my friend. And then I ended up telling her my story. And she took me into the house. And then she contacted her friend at the British High Commission at the embassy.
That's why
And
she
then,
contacted
then,
them.
it's,
Yeah,
then that's how things started to move.
Then they found out that you were in Malta, and
I guess so.
Yeah,
And then contacted my father to arrange for me to go back. Me and my
and your brother.
and my younger brother. My older brother had already left.
he left before.
He left at 16. Yeah.
And how old were you at this time?
14?
14.
14, yeah.
I read also, which is quite interesting, that one of your favorite places where you could swim or relax was St. Thomas Bay in Marsa Scala with a line.
Yes, it's
In
true.
fact, you have a
That's,
photo with your mother and your brother.
Yes.
Do you still remember these places, the sceneries you used to enjoy when you were a boy?
I definitely do. In fact, whenever I come back to Malta, I always stay in Marsa Scala. In that
You
area.
do?
Yeah.
Always.
So at the moment you are staying
Are
in
you-
Marsa Scala?
I am,
You're
again.
living there.
But no, we used to go down, in the times when my father was still here, we would go there with my mother and put the string bag in the water with the drinks to keep
That's
them
something
Drinks
that
cool.
inside.
It was pleasant.
To cool off.
It was, so yeah, and I've still go and see the same,
Do you go and see the scenery where you
yeah,
used
the
to
same,
go like
the same
this
rocks
photo?
and,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I like it down. I've always wondered why there hasn't been more development in that area, because it's
Actually, it's
beautiful.
also the environment, because we have only a few places in Malta where the environment is still the same. To conserve it.
Yeah.
Being a small island, I think you saw the difference of big buildings
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so that is an area that I like to.
something before we talk about your book, I would like to know is what's your impression that there were a lot of poverty in the Maltese society at that time? You mentioned care, the food that the Americans used to send for poor people, and that still strikes you in your memories. If I ask you, what is the contrast of the Maltese society as you saw it when you were 14 years old in the 60s and today?
Well, I think I was talking to Maria earlier about it, and I wonder if that whole poverty thing was more of a reflection on my personal circumstances. I mean, there were poor people around, of course, and especially in the south, more so. It
It's still sort of the same, the south and the north, yeah.
You know, it was a million miles from Sliema, really. People walked around with no shoes. I mean,
I still remember boys.
And this was in the 60s.
in the late 60s, early 70s.
Early 70s.
And of course, because I lived in Pola, I remember at the prison, like you said, where they used to join the queue for the
For the care.
flour and sugar and oil
cheese,
and
yeah.
cheese as well.
Cheese as well, yeah.
So I used to see that, yeah. So now, yeah.
Before we, did you feel that you were a stranger in a foreign land, or after some time you felt that you were one of them?
Yeah, because I came here so young, it was natural to me. It didn't
You
feel.
mixed quite well.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of when I went back to England, I hadn't seen snow. I hadn't seen a colour TV or carpets. It was all going back to England was foreign to me.
Yeah.
You know.
And I'm going to quote you now. And you said, as the children of an airman, we were unique. In what way were you unique?
Unique?
I think
Did I use that word?
unique. On that article, you said you were unique. I think you were on an advantage compared to other children because
I
rather
see what
well
you
off,
mean. Yeah.
right?
I think what I meant was that when we lived, this was when we lived in Figura, and Dad had the nice new car. We had a maid.
A Triumph, no? At that time,
Yeah,
you
the
were very
Herald.
popular, yeah.
And
You
we
were
had a-
looked up to, I think.
I don't know
weren't you?
about that, because as a kid I wouldn't have been aware of that. But on reflection, I think we had a good life in those early
Yes.
years. You know, I imagine that comparatively, I imagine the wages were good. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Does it affect you at that time? I remember, of course, in the 60s, there was this anti-British feeling about, because Malta was asking for independence. Some people agreed, some people, they say Malta should still be a colony. And even once you were addressed like British pigs or something like
yes,
that.
It's true.
Why don't you go home? I still remember those.
Yeah.
Did that you, the Maltese are taking us against us British, or you felt that this was politics and it didn't affect you that much?
I think it was definitely about politics. I think, if anything, I came across it more with adults. So when we talked about other children, there was no issues there. I mean, on this one occasion, I was.
They picked on you because you were fair and British.
I guess on this one occasion that you talk about, when the man set his dog onto me.
I was going to ask you about that. What happened?
But because of the anti-British feeling at the time.
Yeah.
You think so?
I mean, I had to be because you know.
You didn't do anything to do.
Well, you know, but that was rare. That was rare, and that was when all the forces were still here. This was when my father was still. So
in Malta.
I was very young. But no, the dog bit me. I've still got a scar on my leg from it.
You have a trademark.
Yes, I do. A souvenir of Malta. Yeah.
And you still have the mark.
I do.
Yes. Let's go now to the book. You've got By Conscience Bound as an e-book. Is there any chance of having it published as a traditional book, which you can carry about and hold and smell and turn the pages of?
Yeah, I agree with you on all of those sentiments about, books.
Because it's different, isn't it?
It's possible to have it published in a traditional format, and I may look into doing it. But at the moment, I'm trying to keep it as an ebook, and to see how it goes.
I would like to know how this idea of writing a novel, which Mary mentioned, of course, everybody knows is By Conscience Bound. First of all, I would like to ask you how you came up with this title and how this idea of your experience originated and mixed it into a novel.
Yeah.
So I think, I didn't read the book, but it's a mixture of facts and fiction, is it?
It's true.
Can you explain
sure.
people who are hearing us how this thing originated in your mind?
So the plot is fiction, but all of the references.
Can you give us a short idea of the plot?
Okay, so if I start with the title.
Don't disclose the.
If I start
part.
If I start with the title, By Conscience Bound, that originates from going to visit my mother in hospital a couple of days before she died, and her telling me or asking me to look after my younger brother, who, if you like, was my half-brother. And of course I promised, yes, of course I'll look after him. And then within a few weeks I'd left the island, and so there was that whole guilt thing going on, that I'd left him, my mother asked me to take care of him, and I'd left him.
You didn't.
This was part of the
This is
fact?
true.
That's
This is
part
true.
of
This is true. So then I had this idea that I could have this character, I suppose, loosely based on me, that returns to the island, having discovered that his brother has been killed.
Oh.
The brother
Yes,
who you were
who
supposed
I
to
left
take care
behind,
of.
Yes. And so that was the whole cathartic thing for me, really. So yes, the plot is woven around returning to Malta and finding out what had happened and why to my brother.
Investigating the circumstances.
Investigating, it's not really like a police investigation. It's just a brother doing what you can, meeting his friends and trying to find out what happened, and then carrying out revenge.
On yourself?
No.
Revenge
the
on
people.
what?
So the revenge will be on the murderers of my...
Because your brother was murdered.
Your brother was murdered?
Not in real life.
No, in the novel.
I know. In the
Now
novel.
you start getting the fiction.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Fiction.
So it's writing it has given me an opportunity. It's been a vehicle, really, to keep diving back into the future, writing about my experiences, and then coming back to the past, and in and out like that.
Yeah.
But it's Malta-based, with the odd bits here and there in other countries. But it's certainly Malta-based.
Yeah. Vince, before we go on, will you explain to our listeners what is exactly an e-book?
Okay. Ebooks. My particular book is an ebook. It's an electronic book, primarily designed for Kindle, the Kindle e-readers that everyone now gets. So books can be downloaded to your Kindle and then kept to read, forever. But you don't need to have a Kindle. You can have a Kindle application, which you download for free, onto your iPad, your PC or your Mac, and then it can be read on other e-readers, as they now call them. Okay. So yes, it's an e-book that could be published in the future as a traditional book, possibly.
Yeah, so we read it on our computers.
So do you have an idea how many people went into this Kindle to read your novel?
Around 1,500 so far. Quite a lot of them in America.
Do you consider that a good figure?
I do. I can't really tell how many of those people were Maltese. I mean, I know through personal experience that some of them are, because in Malta, if you go onto Amazon to find my book, you will either be going through Amazon UK or Amazon.com, the American one. So all the figures merge, and I don't know.
Yes, I see.
I don't know.
Is it written in the first person? This book of yours? Did you write it in
not
first
really,
person?
no. It's more of a third person.
I see.
Yeah.
Does it have an anticlimax, or because we came to the introduction of the title, but does it have? It's a thriller, no?
It is.
You showed us the cover of the book.
Yeah.
It involves an aircraft, a fighting aircraft, submarine. How is all this mixture?
Well, I didn't want to give away too much of the story.
But
all of the elements of the cover are involved with the story. What more can I say without giving it away, I wonder? I've already told you someone's been killed.
He's trying to make you talk about it.
Yeah.
Usually have a sample, so that you say, oh, what a good food this is, or what a good book it is.
Well, if we had more time, I could read you the first couple of paragraphs, but we don't have
Eventually, so we go to your life again, to the facts. You went back to UK, and eventually you joined the army?
Yes, so I got back to Britain at aged 14, around 14. Went to school for a couple more years. I had various jobs, cooking, cleaning jobs, nothing special. And then I joined the army in 1979.
And you were stationed?
I was stationed in Dortmund, in Germany, for most of my career. I left after about 17 years.
And then you wore another uniform.
And yes,
you like uniforms.
They're free, aren't they? I don't have to buy work clothes.
You don't have to wonder what you're going to wear tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah, it's the white shirt or the white shirt. Yeah.
But we can say that now you are a police officer in the London Metropolitan Police. Am I
That's right. Yeah, I'm based in West
How
London.
is the life of a policeman in London? We hear and see so many videos of how busy some of the events happening in London keeps you busy. Are you in a specialized force or?
I'm part of a task force.
A task force, yeah.
And so we tend to get sent where the biggest problem is.
So that's where you are always in the midst of problems.
Yes. But what I like about it, and I think
since childhood.
yeah. What I like about it is every day is potentially different. And it's shift work, and I couldn't stand to do office hours.
Routine.
And I think that's probably, down to my past of moving around quite a bit, really. Because even before we came to Malta, we moved every 3 years.
Because it was due to your father's sort of
work,
job.
Yeah. So yeah, it's it has its excitements, this job, but.
Were you probably were around in the latest riots that were in London? And
I absolutely was in the thick of it, yes.
Well, how was it? Was it? I know it's not a good word to say. Were you frightened? But was it exciting? Or dangerous? Shall I put it like this?
It was surreal, just to be surrounded by burning buildings.
So you were there where we saw those videos of burning buildings.
I was in Tottenham
and going up.
Yeah. It was the training is good, and so the training.
I was going to ask you: Are you trained for these situations?
Yeah. So the training kicks in, and after a while you see it as a training exercise, And it's not until later that you think that was a bit close, you know. But yeah.
Vince, Charles asked you about the book, whether he can have a sample of it so that he will see whether he likes it or not, or whether it's interesting.
with no divulging of secrets.
Would you like to read a paragraph or two out of your book?
I could do.
Yeah, of course.
Let me have a look. Just give me a minute.
You'll be very welcome.
I like that cover.
Oh, thank you.
So in a few minutes we're going to hear Vince. We're going to listen to his reading a part of his novel, By Conscience Bound. Infakkarkom qabel ma jibda jaqra Vince illi it-tieni parti ta' dan il-programm it-tieni nofsejn se jkun jikkonsisti fil-li aħna nagħmlu translation ħannerġgħu ngħidu bil-Malti dak kollu li qalilna Vince dwar il-ħajja tiegħu. Mela issa minn hawn ftit ieħor ħanisimgħu jaqra ftit minn dan il-ktieb illi kiteb bħalma smajtu jgħid nistgħu niżluh minn fuq li huwa e-book mhux ktieb li nistgħu nixtruh minn
Però għalina wkoll li jiġi pubblikat fi ktieb.
Forsi iktar il-qudiem. Okay then.
I'll start a little way into the prologue, and Joey is the character that I've based my brother on. So this is him leaving the house. So shouting out an unanswered farewell, Joey left the house and hung his shirt in the back of his pride and joy. A 10-year-old Vauxhall Cavalier, gleaming in the morning sun, and a testament to the hours he'd spent washing and polishing its metallic red paint. With its Bedford Griffin emblem cut into the steering wheel, the car was a symbol of his hunger for all things British. Unlike its counterparts that had rolled off the Luton production line at the same time and remained in Britain, his Vauxhall was a testimony to the dry, warm climate and was virtually rust-free. In fact, such a car as this was quite a status symbol in his neighbourhood. Joey turned the ignition key and the Cavalier bucked forward. He had taken it to leaving it in gear since the handbrake cable had snapped last month, and as usual he had forgotten to put it into neutral before starting. Okay, the next part describes driving down towards Marsa Docks. There used to be a road down there past all the engineer works. That's all closed now, but that was what I had in mind when I... So turning left out of Valletta Road, where he lived, Joey joined the main road towards the island's capital of the same name. The thought of asking her, his Albie, to marry him tomorrow made him feel carefree and heady with happiness. Fishing out a Spice Girls tape, Joey cranked up the volume as loud as it would go and sped down the road, singing "If You Want to Be My Lover" at the top of his voice, drumming out the rhythm on the steering wheel. Taking the second left at the roundabout that marked the end of Paola and the beginning of Marsa, Joey crested the brow of the long, steep hill that ran down to Marsa Docks, now a little-used shortcut to Valletta. He had just started to gather speed on the quiet stretch of road when a figure darted out in front of him. Joey, torn from his music-induced reverie, braked hard. He felt rather than heard a popping sound, followed by an immediate loss of resistance in the brake pedal as it travelled all the way to the bulkhead. Instinctively, Joey yanked hard on the handbrake lever, but with no cable attached, it offered the same lack of resistance that the foot brake had. The rear of a truck loomed fast in front of him as he vainly tried to throw the Cavalier into low gear, managing only to achieve the grinding, clunking sound of gear cogs attempting to mesh together at impossible speeds. Self-preservation taking over, Joey's automatic reaction was to steer the out-of-control Vauxhall away from the truck now inches from his bumper, but in doing so he oversteered, sending his stricken car hurtling towards a pile of pallets stacked up on the dockside. Joey screamed in terror, begging the Virgin Mary to make the wooden wall stop him, but over 50 miles an hour, the Cavalier made matchwood of the pallets. Something caught the eye of the crane operator, unloading palleted sacks of grain from the hold of the Russian ship, and looking down, he was just in time to see a car smashing through the pallets that he had stacked so carefully just yesterday. The car seemed to hover momentarily above the dockside before hitting the water nose first with an almighty splash, throwing up a plume of spray. From his perch high above the docks, the operator could only stare, open-mouthed, cursing his own helplessness. Inside the Cavalier, Joey was slumped, dazed over the steering wheel. He was conscious, but both legs were trapped in a vice-like grip by the crumpled superstructure, and he couldn't move an inch. The car was filling fast, and in a matter of 2 minutes, the water was up to his chest. He put up a colossal but futile struggle against the bent and twisted metal, but time wasn't with him, any more than was the Madonna to whom he feverishly prayed. In the end, the laws of physics prevailed, and the weight of the 1800cc engine dragged the Vauxhall nose first into the murky depths of Marsa Docks. Shall I read some more?
It's very interesting.
It's really...
How long did it take you to... very touching.
Very touching.
Heart touching. How long did it take you to finish the book, to write the book?
Well, I started it 12 years ago, believe it or not.
But on and off.
On and off, and as I said, it was for my own personal reasons, really.
Yeah.
It did make me feel better.
Yeah.
And then I put it away, and then I would say, oh, I can't leave him here, I'll have to...
And you've started
to move it on.
No.
I tried a couple of publishers, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult to get published traditionally, unless you are an established author already.
Yes.
So when the chance to publish it as an ebook on Amazon came, that's I took it.
Yeah, but we hope that in the future you'll have your wish come true.
Yes, I hope so.
We hope that we'll hear it on the news.
Before you leave us, what are your dearest memories? You come to Malta quite often, you told us before the program. But what are your dearest memories of the island? When you were a young boy, today, when you visit the cemetery and you go on your mother's grave, what are... because my impression is that you are very much attached to the island.
Yes.
You are still attached.
Yeah.
What are the dearest memories of the island?
It's funny because I was talking to some tourists some years ago, and they had been disappointed. I think maybe the location that they'd been put. And the person I was with said to them, well, you know, Vincent grew up here. And the guy said, well, he can't help it then, can he? And it's true. Can't help come back. So...
Yeah, well, part of you is here.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I get off the aeroplane, it feels and it smells like home to me still.
Home from home.
It's still. Yeah. I mean, there were good times, of course. And as a kid, you're quite resilient, aren't you? You might be hungry, but I still had a good play around, and especially in Marsa, we always used to go there and walk across those flat metal barges that used to be that they tow stuff on
with the coal and
so I used to walk out across those as far as I could go and catch some mullet or try to.
The water is very American.
Yeah. So I used to like that area. And when I come back, I've rediscovered the three cities actually, and I was down there today, just sitting in Kalkara, and I that's my favourite part of the island.
Yes, but I agree with you. Yeah.
You are staying in Marsa Scala.
Yes.
Marsa Scala is not a top-notch tourist area, but still you chose to stay in Marsa Scala because of the memory and when you were a young boy?
I think so, and
St. Thomas Bay.
And I always think that a lot of tourists that come to Malta, they're pushed by the companies all into one area. And they never get to see... I mean, it's the same as everywhere. If you know where to go, that's where you go. But no, I started going to Marsa Scala about 10 years ago, and I've always gone back there now.
Yes.
I like the local feel of it. You know, in the evening with the kids and the families.
Yes.
And just sitting
by the water. You are with the family here?
No, not this time. No.
And you remember some Maltese words? Do you?
Eva.
So can we close this with some Maltese words you might remember?
It's funny, you know what I always remember, and that's a silly little rhyme that we used to say at school.
Will you tell it
about,
to us?
Atasharo wichu kiber, ودناخ أبزول الشبرة.
That's very good. That's very good.
Not very, not very conversational, but
Well, with that,
the message there.
with that rhyme, we will end our conversation here with Vince. Vince, we thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
For accepting our invitation to come on our program, to be part of the program. And we wish you all that whatever makes you happy, we wish you
Thank
would
you.
have it. And we hope that you will visit us from time to time. And we thank you again, once again.
Thank you.
I think that this interview was very, very interesting, much more than I expected, because we
Oh, that's good.
no, because we hardly knew anything about
Of
you. Now we
course,
know
yeah.
everything about you. And I think it will be appreciated by our listeners. And I thank you, as Maria did, for your cooperation and assisting with this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.